Right now, 12,500 feet beneath the North Atlantic Ocean, a rusted steel bow points silently into the dark. It has not moved in 113 years. The ship it belongs to was, for 4 days in April 1912, the largest moving object ever built by human hands, 882 feet long, 46,328 tons of steel, carrying 2,224 people, and widely believed to be unsinkable. It sank in 2 hours and 40 minutes. More than 1,500 people died in water so cold it killed in 15 minutes. And here is the fact that will stay with you. The ship's owners had been warned about ice in those exact waters at least 5 times on that exact day. This is not just the story of a ship. This is the story of human arrogance colliding with the Atlantic Ocean and losing catastrophically. It is the summer of 1907, and you are sitting inside the most exclusive private residence in London. White Star Line chairman J. Bruce Ismay and his host, the American financier J.P. Morgan, are finishing dinner. Morgan is one of the wealthiest men alive. And over brandy in that dining room, the two men sketch out an idea that will end with 1,500 people dead in the ocean. They want to build not the fastest ocean liners in the world, but the largest. 3 ships, bigger than anything ever floated. The Olympic, the Titanic, and the Britannic. They will not race the competition. They will simply make the competition irrelevant. On July 29, 1908, the design is formally approved. The contract goes to Harland & Wolff Shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland, the greatest shipbuilding operation on Earth. The chief designer, Thomas Andrews, is 35 years old, meticulous, brilliant, and proud. He draws a ship with a double bottom, 16 watertight compartments, and enough lifeboats to technically satisfy the regulations of 1912. Regulations that, catastrophically, were written in 1894 when ships were 1/3 this size. Here is the first fact that most people never know. The Titanic was not designed to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board. By law, it only had to carry boats for 962 people. It carried 2,224. Nobody questioned this. The lifeboats were considered a formality, a courtesy for ferrying survivors to rescue ships, not for evacuating an ocean liner that everyone assumed could never sink. On March 31, 1909, construction begins at Harland & Wolff Slip 3. It takes 3,000 workers, 3 million rivets, and 26 months to build Titanic from the keel up. At the peak of construction, workers handle up to 100,000 rivets per day. The noise inside that shipyard is
deafening. The grind of steel, the roar of furnaces, the thunder of hydraulic presses. A cathedral being built not to God, but to human ambition. On May 31, 1911, the hull of Titanic is launched into the River Lagan. 22 tons of tallow, soap, and train oil coat the slipway. 100,000 people watch. There is no champagne broken across the bow. White Star Line never christened their ships, not once. Some later said that was a bad omen. Others laughed at the superstition. By the time Titanic finishes her fitting out in April 1912, she is something the world has genuinely never seen. Her first-class dining saloon seats 532 people and is modeled on the Palace of Versailles. The first-class lounge copies the Palace of Versailles library. There is a Turkish bath, a heated swimming pool, a squash court, a Parisian cafe, and a fully stocked barber shop. First-class passengers pay up to £870 for a parlor suite, roughly $100,000 in today's money, for a single crossing. The ship's 2 reciprocating engines and 1 turbine generate 51,000 combined horsepower. She burns 650 tons of coal every single day. It takes 176 coal trimmers working in shifts just to feed her furnaces. Down in the boiler rooms, where the heat reaches 120 degrees Fahrenheit and the air tastes of coal dust and sulfur, these men shovel for their lives 6 days a week. Now here is the inequality built into Titanic's bones, and this is a detail the movies rarely show you. Third-class passengers, 709 of them, mostly immigrants from Ireland, Scandinavia, Syria, and Lebanon, were physically separated from upper-class passengers, not just by luxury, but by locked gates and physical barriers. The White Star Line did this to comply with American immigration law, which required steerage passengers to be kept isolated to prevent the spread of disease. Those locked gates will matter enormously in a few days' time. On April 10, 1912, Titanic departs Southampton for New York on her maiden voyage. 2,224 people are aboard, 885 crew, and 1,317 passengers. Among them, John Jacob Astor IV, the wealthiest man on board, worth $85 million, nearly $2.5 billion today. Margaret or Molly Brown, the Colorado mining heiress. Benjamin Guggenheim, heir to the Guggenheim mining fortune, and Thomas Andrews himself, the ship's designer, making the crossing to observe his masterpiece in action, notebook in hand, making minor adjustments. Captain Edward Smith, 62 years old, is on his final voyage before retirement. He has crossed the Atlantic more than 50 times without incident. He knows these waters like the lines of his own hands. That knowledge will not save a single soul.
The North Atlantic in April is a killing field of ice. Every spring, glaciers calve off Greenland and drift south into the shipping lanes. Bergs the size of department stores, growlers the size of cars, invisible at night, invisible in fog, invisible when the sea is flat and starless. Between April 12th and April 14th, Titanic receives at least 5 wireless messages from other ships warning of ice directly in her path. On the morning of April 14th, the steamship Caronia reports bergs and field ice at latitude 42 degrees north. That afternoon, the Baltic reports large quantities of field ice at the exact coordinates Titanic is heading toward. The message reaches Captain Smith. He shows it to J. Bruce Ismay, who pockets it, literally places it in his jacket, and doesn't return it for several hours. That evening, 2 more ice warnings arrive from the America and the Mesaba. The Mesaba's message is perhaps the most critical. It reports ice and a large number of field ice in a specific area directly ahead. The wireless operator, Harold Bride, 22 years old, is buried under a backlog of passenger telegrams. Wealthy passengers sending personal messages to New York, market updates, social calls. The Mesaba's ice warning never reaches the bridge. It sits on the wireless room table. At 9:40 p.m., the Californian, a ship just 10 to 19 miles away, sends one final warning. The wireless operator Cyril Evans is sharply told to stop interrupting. He shuts off his set and goes to bed. Titanic is sailing at 22.5 knots, near full speed, into a field of ice on a moonless night with a flat, mirror-like sea. Here is the counterintuitive fact that haunts every maritime historian. A slightly rougher sea would have saved the ship. In choppy water, ice creates white foam at its base, visible from a distance. On a perfectly calm night like April 14th, there is no foam. No warning, only darkness. At 11:39 p.m., lookout Frederick Fleet spots the iceberg directly ahead. He rings the crow's nest bell 3 times. He picks up the telephone. He says the 4 words that change history. You feel it before you hear it, a long, shuddering vibration that runs through every deck, every bulkhead, every sleeping body in every cabin in the sea. To many passengers, it sounds like tearing cloth. To the men in the boiler rooms, it sounds like the end of the world. First Officer William Murdoch orders hard to starboard and full astern. The ship begins to turn, but 46,000 tons cannot turn like a car. The iceberg makes contact at 11:40 p.m. on the starboard side, below the waterline, for approximately 10 seconds. It does not rip a gash the way the movies show. It buckles and separates rivets along a 300-foot section of the hull, opening a series of small punctures and seams that together admit 400 tons of seawater per minute. Thomas Andrews is awakened and brought below. He calculates quickly. 6 watertight compartments are flooding. Titanic can survive 4, not 6. He looks at Captain Smith and
delivers his verdict quietly, clinically. The ship has perhaps 90 minutes, possibly 2 hours. She will certainly founder. She will take 2 hours and 40 minutes. What follows is a masterclass in the cruelty of class. Lifeboats begin loading at 12:45 a.m., and here the arithmetic of survival becomes monstrous. There are 20 lifeboats with a total capacity of 1,178. There are 2,224 people. Even if every boat is filled to capacity, and most are not, more than 1,000 people will die. Lifeboat 1, which has a capacity of 40, is launched with just 12 people on board, including Sir Cosmo Duff Gordon and his wife. Third-class passengers, the immigrants, the laborers, the people with the least, are still below decks. Some are held back by locked gates. Others simply don't know where to go on a ship the size of a city. By the time many of them reach the boat deck, the lifeboats are gone. Third-class survival rate, 25%. First-class male survival rate, 32%. First-class female survival rate, 97%. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat leaves. 1,500 people remain on the ship. Captain Smith releases the crew from their duties. It's every man for himself. Thomas Andrews is last seen in the first-class smoking room, staring at a painting called The Approach to the New World, his life jacket lying on a table beside him. He makes no effort to save himself. He designed the ship. He knows exactly what he did and did not build. At 2:17 a.m., the bow plunges underwater. The stern rises. The lights, which have burned through the entire sinking, powered by the engineers who stayed at their posts and drowned, flicker once, go out, come back on, go out forever. At 2:20 a.m., Titanic breaks in two and sinks. In the water, 1,500 people are screaming. The water temperature is 28 degrees Fahrenheit, below freezing. A human body loses consciousness in this temperature within 15 minutes. The screaming lasts for longer than that. And then, one of the most devastating facts in this entire story, the lifeboats do not come back. The people in the lifeboats, safe and dry, listen to the screaming and do nothing. They are afraid of being swamped. Out of 710 survivors in lifeboats, only Lifeboat 14, under 5th Officer Harold Lowe, returns to the wreck site, and it returns only after the screaming stops. Lowe rescues 13 people. Historians have never forgiven the rest. At 4:10 a.m. on April 15, 1912, RMS Carpathia arrives. 710 survivors are pulled aboard. The Carpathia's passengers give everything: their cabins, their clothes, their food, their whiskey. Survivors arrive in New York on April 18th to 40,000 people standing in the rain on the docks. The inquiries begin immediately. Britain holds one. America holds one. Both reach the same broad conclusions: excessive speed in ice conditions, insufficient lifeboats, poor lifeboat drill, inadequate lookout procedures. Both broadly exonerate White Star Line. J. Bruce Ismay, who climbed into a lifeboat as the ship was sinking, is savaged in the American press. He spends the rest of his life in near total isolation in a house on the coast of Connemara, Ireland. He never discusses the Titanic again. The international consequences are profound and permanent. By 1914, the International Ice Patrol is established and has operated continuously ever since, monitoring iceberg positions in the North Atlantic for over a century. New maritime laws require every ship to carry enough lifeboats for every person on board. Radio operators must now maintain a 24-hour watch. These rules exist because 1,500 people died. They did not exist before. Here is the fact almost no one knows. The SS Californian, the ship 10 to 19 miles away, whose wireless operator had gone to bed, could see Titanic's distress rockets. Multiple crew members on Californian watched white rockets arc into the sky between midnight and 2 a.m. Captain Stanley Lord was awakened and told. He went back to sleep. The Californian did not move. This decision haunts maritime history. A 1992 British re-examination concluded that if Californian had responded, many, if not all of the lives that were lost need not have been lost. For 73 years, Titanic lies undisturbed on the ocean floor. Then, on September 1st, 1985, oceanographer Dr. Robert Ballard and a joint American-French expedition locate the wreck at a depth of 12,415 feet, 370 miles south-southeast of Newfoundland. The bow section and stern section lie 1,970 feet apart, which confirms the long-disputed fact that Titanic broke in two on the surface before sinking. For the first time in 7 decades, human eyes see the bow still upright, still elegant. The crow's nest where Frederick Fleet rang his bell still intact. Since then, over 6,000 artifacts have been recovered from the site. Shoes still lying in pairs where bodies dissolved. A leather wallet still containing banknotes, a child's toy, a menu from the first-class dinner served on April 14, 1912. The main entree that evening was filet mignon. The dessert was French ice cream. It was, by all accounts, exceptional. Today, the wreck is deteriorating. Iron-eating bacteria called Halomonas titanicae are consuming the hull at an accelerating rate. Marine biologists estimate that by 2030, the bow will likely collapse entirely. The most famous ship in history is slowly, quietly being eaten by bacteria. What stays with you after you absorb all of this is not the iceberg, it is the choices. 5 ice warnings ignored or buried under passenger telegrams. Lifeboats launched half empty while 1,500 people froze in the dark. A ship 10 miles away that did not move. Regulations written for a different era applied to a vessel 3 times the size they were designed for. Titanic did not sink because of bad luck. It sank because of decisions made by intelligent, confident, powerful people who believed they had already solved the problem. That is why Titanic refuses to leave us. It is not a story about a ship. It is a story about what happens when human beings become so certain they have conquered something that they stop paying attention. The Atlantic Ocean was not impressed by 46,328 tons of steel. It never is. Somewhere below us right now, a rusted bow is still pointing into the dark. The crow's nest bell may still be there. And if you listen, if you really listen, the ocean has something to say about arrogance. If this story stayed with you, drop a comment below. I want to know which moment hit hardest. And if you want more stories like this, where history isn't just dates and facts, but something you actually feel, subscribe. There are more stories coming, and every single one of them will be worth your time.